Hello everybody, the Steam Winter Sale 2019 has begun, and I am here, of course, to give you a bunch of recommendations on some awesome games. Now, in the past, the way I've done this is I typically do two videos. The first one is like all the big games, like games that you may have heard of or probably have heard of, but I think are really good. And then I would follow up with a second video of what I consider are, hidden gems, things that people should be playing but aren't, or maybe are like really good deals that people are not considering. But I'm going to do things a little bit different this year. We're just going to do one big video with a smattering of awesome video games. And my goal with this video is to have every single game that I am recommending to be good, where you can jump in regardless if you're a person who likes the genre or anything like that of whatever game it is, be able to jump in and just enjoy yourself. So that is the goal for this video, and believe it or not, that's a lot harder to do than you might imagine. Additionally, I want to mention that you can generally find better deals elsewhere that are not on Steam nowadays, but still receive a Steam key in some cases. So for example, greenmangaming.com, you can often find a lot of these same deals, but slightly better. And you get a Steam key in 90% of the cases. You just have to go make sure of it. It will say it on the page for whatever game you're picking up, whether or not you get a Steam key or a key for like Uplay or Epic Game Store or stuff like that. So that is the first thing that I wanted to mention. And by the way, I take my word for whatever you think is the case here, but I am a Green Man Gaming affiliate, and if you would like to support the channel, go to the link below in the description and in the comments, and you'll be able to support the channel by doing that. Any purchase made while going through that link does kick some of that money back at us, and that is a really good way to support us if you're already going to buy a game anyways, especially because, again, generally it's slightly cheaper on Green Man than it is with Steam, and as of right now, there are no issues with Green Man and keys and stuff like that, so you don't really have to worry about any of those issues. It is a legitimate vendor. Additionally, if you're looking for good deals, even if you don't like the Epic Game Store, they've got some really good stuff going on right now, where essentially they've got deep discounts on these games, but you also get a $10 off voucher that you can use. And as long as you're buying a game that is $14.99 or more, and I think the code only works on games $14.99 or more, you'll get a second voucher, and it continues to change. So you can go get a $14.99 game and then be able to get it for essentially $5 and then use that code again on another game, the same thing, and you get the point. It's really good. And a lot of the big games like Borderlands 3 and Jedi Fallen Order and stuff like that, you can get those games $10 additional off, and is the cheapest that you can find it at the moment. So that is another thing to consider. Regardless if you like Epic Game Store or not, there are some better deals over there. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's just jump right in and get started. The first few games that I'm going to recommend are games that we're actually doing as series on the channel currently, so it should be no surprise to those of you who are watching our stuff that I am recommending these because I find them fantastic. First and foremost, Hades just reached Steam, and oh my goodness, do I recommend this game. It is one of Supergiant's best games, if not their best. It is currently in early access, but don't take that as a bad thing because they are constantly updating the sucker, and they've been doing a great job over the last year of doing so. Bunches and bunches of updates have come out to the game, and it is easily one of the best roguelike games out there, just period. It's so freaking solid. You have excellent, solid action combat that you would find in some of their other games like Bastion and Transistor, but you also get a really phenomenal story, and some just amazing game design has been thrown into this game to make it an excellent experience. Totally would recommend. 10 out of 10 game for me. The other thing is, if you get it on Steam at the moment, you do get a free giftable copy of Pyre, which is one of their more interesting titles. It is like it's NBA Jam meets a narrative driven kind of game. I know that sounds really weird, but if you play it, you will understand, or you can just gift it to somebody if you have it and stuff like that. So it is also considered in this deal to make the deal a bit sweeter, but I think Hades is fantastic. Everybody should play it. I really, 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 really love Hades. But maybe you have Hades, you like that kind of roguelike stuff, then go pick up Undermine. Undermine is also another fantastic little game that is constantly getting little updates. Of course, it is also in early access, but they just received like their big Crystalline update, which added the second to last zone to the game and a bunch of other stuff. The developers are absolutely crushing it with this. It's a little indie game, but I love the heck out of Undermine. It's a lot of fun. It's funny, and it is endlessly replayable. It just constantly is, you know, it's kind of like Hades in that respect, where every time you play it, you're going to run into new stuff. And I think that Undermine does a really good job of its theming that it adds in, plus just of its gameplay. It's fun. It's cool. Even if you don't like the kind of older pixelated style of art that they're using, it's still just a solid game gameplay wise. And finally, for games that we are doing as a series on the channel, I would recommend Divinity Original Sin 2, the definitive edition. Divinity is just a crazy good game. I think Original Sin 2 did a phenomenal job of providing players with the experience of playing an RPG, like a D&D type game, but in video game form. It even has a Dungeon Master mode, which you can go and play with friends and like create your own D&D type adventure, but in the form of video game. So that is another thing to consider. But the game does have full multiplayer, so you could play it solo, which is totally fine and totally fun, or you can join the chaos and get up to three other people to come and play with you, and you guys can play as a full party. It's a lot of fun. It is a fantastic RPG, one of the best to come out in the last decade, and just a phenomenal story overall. Like phenomenal story, phenomenal gameplay. Absolutely would recommend this game, especially the definitive edition. Don't worry about like the Divine edition. It just comes with a soundtrack and art pack and stuff like that. It's okay if you're willing to throw out the extra bucks for it, then go ahead. It's not something I would get. And I'm a person who really enjoys the game, but just Original Sin 2 will be the definitive edition when you pick it up on Steam, which comes with a bunch of other cool little things within the game and a bunch of improvements to the game. And I love the hell out of it. Definitely would recommend it. Next up, it wouldn't be a sale video without me talking about my favorite game of all time, which is the original Life is Strange. You can play the first episode for free on Steam, and then the rest of it is super cheap. It's like less than $5. I think it's actually like $4 to get episodes 1 through 5 or 2 through 5 or whatever you want to call it. Life is Strange is a game that surprised the hell out of me when I played it. I just figured I would jump in and kind of see what it was about. And as it turns out, it is definitely my favorite game of all time. I always warn people about this. The first couple episodes of this game, because it is an episodic game, are not what the game is story-wise. The game completely subverts all expectations. By the time you reach the end of episode 3, you'll know what I mean. And then episode 4 and 5 just go bonkers, and it's really solid. If you're looking for a story that will make you feel something, then Life is Strange is that game. Additionally, I always, tend to say like, hey, just try to make it through episode 2 and you'll see what I mean on this one. But I am going to say, if you're a person who is interested in these kind of games and you're like, ooh, the other games are also on sale, maybe I should pick them up, I'm going to warn you away from that. Life is Strange 2 just came out. It finished its final episode, and I recommend people don't even bother. It's not the greatest. It's kind of bad, and I didn't like it really at all. I thought the first couple episodes were good, and then it really went downhill. So do not pick up Life is Strange 2 unless you're really into it and you really want to see it. Otherwise, don't bother. If you play Life is Strange and you enjoy it and you're like, this is cool, and you want an additional part of that story, or maybe you've played it in the past and you want an additional part of that story, Before the Storm is also on sale, which is kind of the follow-up to Life is Strange. It is a prequel to the story, and it gives you a little bit of information on Chloe and Rachel, and I think that is a cool little addition to the series. And then if you are going to play Life is Strange 2, go play the Adventures of Captain Spirit first, because it is free. You don't have to buy it, and that will give you a tie-in to Life is Strange 2. So you can transfer your save over and everything. It's pretty cool. But yeah, if you're going to buy one of these games, just get the first one. It is phenomenal. if you are into board games and tabletop games, then you really have to buy Tabletop Simulator if you don't have it. It is freaking awesome. It allows you to play a bunch of board games online with your friends. So you could buy like a 4-pack of it at a discount. So you can split that if you really want to with friends and be able to play with friends, you know, like any kind of really good board game. And I'm not talking Monopoly. I'm talking things like Betrayal at House on the Hill, or even like Ticket to Ride and stuff like that. You know, Settlers of Catan. There's really good board games out there that you can play that are available on the Steam Workshop. It's people who have made their own mod versions of them. You can download for free and play those on Tabletop Simulator. Additionally, they have official DLC of things like Scythe and Zia Legends of a Drift System, and what's the other really good one? There's a boss monster that just came out, but it's not on sale. A lot of the other DLC is on sale, and the official DLC tends to be pretty good, but you really want to just use Tabletop Simulator for the workshop. Totally free, right, to use the workshop and download this stuff, and you'll be able to play some excellent board games for, you know, basically $10 with all of your friends. And honestly, Tabletop Simulator is one of the ways that I trial games that are expensive before I buy them, because some board games are stupid expensive. You know, I'm looking at you, Gloom Haven, right? Like, that's a good example of a huge freaking game that is very, very expensive as a board game, but is totally worth it. But you wouldn't know if you liked it unless you played it first. So Tabletop Simulator allows you to kind of take the sticker shock off of a lot of big board games before you play them, and to allow you to enjoy a lot of smaller games as well. So I always recommend Tabletop Simulator. It's one of the things that really got me into board games again, because I was able to, you know, go and play those and then actually pick them up in real life. And I love this game. But if you are a person who is into board games, and you like things that are like big box board games, like Gloom Haven, for example, which is a phenomenal board game, one of my favorites, if not my favorite board game now, because I've put quite a bit of time into that game, then you need to consider the fact that they are making a digital version of Gloom Haven, which you can pick up right now. It is in early access and it is a digital adaptation, which means there are things that are not quite the same or changed from the board game, but for the most part, they've done a pretty good job of going back and getting the game updated anytime they add a new update to make the game more like the board game rather than less like it. And that is really good news, because Gloom Haven is a phenomenal board game. And then being able to play it digitally by yourself or with other friends later on when they, you know, add more updates to it is going to be freaking phenomenal. I love Gloom Haven, but it is really difficult to get people around to actually play through a campaign of it, especially because a campaign of it can take forever. It is a big game. It is a game you constantly come back to. And having a digital version of it is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to actually, you know, get the game out there to people and show them that, yeah, the big box version of it is expensive, but worth it, because you can come play this and, you know, try it out, see if you like it first. Or additionally, if you did pick up Tabletop Simulator, there is an Gloom Haven mod on the workshop that is really, really good. And the guy who makes Gloom Haven has given them his blessing, so you don't have to worry about like weird copyright issues. You can just download it and play it, and it gets updated pretty frequently too. So I would also recommend that. Let's shift gears a bit and change to a game that I consider a hidden gem, but is a game that I really think more people should play because it is so good. Children of Morta is a phenomenal action RPG that I feel like everybody should try, because it gives you a really good sense of family. And it does this in several ways. The idea of the game is family. You have these characters that are going together, and it's got kind of like a rogue-like element to it, where you progress a little bit, and then you might die, and then you go back and you upgrade your stuff, and then you go back into where you need to go, and the game progresses throughout time. And the way they give you a sense of family is that all of the characters you're playing are family with each other, and you get to learn the little stories. And anytime you go back to the town after you die or you fail or whatever you want to call it, you get, you know, just a little bit more story. And it's so well done. Most importantly, though, the reason I recommend this game is if you have another person in real life to play with, do it, because you can play this game as shared and not split screen, but a shared screen co-op where they're also on the screen with you. You can have somebody playing on a controller and one of you could be playing on mouse and keyboard, or you can connect 2 controllers and play that way. It doesn't matter. I don't care how you play it, but jump into this game and play co-op with somebody, because you will see what I mean when I say that this game is made for you feeling like there is a family. Because when you are playing with another person, you feel that in ways that I cannot even express through words. It's just the feeling of being next to somebody and conquering these challenges and doing so cooperatively, and learning about these characters together makes you feel like you are family, right? If you have somebody who is family that you enjoy playing games with, would recommend. If you have someone who's not family and just a friend of yours, I would also recommend it. It is a phenomenal action RPG that I love the hell out of, and I swear I wish more people would be talking about this game because it is so very, very, very good. Next up, let's talk about a game that gets more than enough recommendations from everybody, and I don't necessarily need to be the one to do it, but the reason I am going to recommend it is because they have a new game coming out this next year that is going to be super hype, and everybody should be playing that one. So go pick up The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. CD Projekt Red killed it. Don't worry about The Witcher 1. Definitely don't worry about The Witcher 1. It is a rough game. The Witcher 2 is better, but it is starting to show its age significantly. The Witcher 3, you don't need to have played the other 2 games. Sure, it helps, but you don't need to have played them. It is just a really good action RPG that is set in a massive open world that does a really good job of putting you in that world. Not like your character, but like your person. You really get invested in the world in ways that you wouldn't expect. Like, the storytelling in this game is phenomenal. The combat in it is really good, and they just did a really good job of making you care about the characters that they put in front of you enough that you'll want to see the whole story through. It is a long game, especially if you're going to do any of the side missions, which you may not know you're doing, because a lot of the side missions are connected to the main mission, and they do a really good job of, doing that kind of dynamic where there's a bunch of main missions, there's a bunch of side missions. They all kind of feel like they're a part of the same story, and you're getting a lot of the same progression throughout those as you're progressing on the main story. So the side missions feel relevant to you. That's hard to do, but they've done a really good job of it. I would recommend picking up the Game of the Year edition. It's slightly more expensive, but you do get all of the DLC and stuff, and it is just phenomenal. The DLC is really good. If you haven't touched it, I would recommend it. If you have played The Witcher 3 and you haven't touched the expansions, like, go get that stuff. It is totally worth it. But again, CD Projekt Red is about to have Cyberpunk 2077 come out next year, which is going to blow everybody's minds. And from everything we've seen so far, it looks like it's going to be one of the biggest games in the last decade. So I recommend playing The Witcher 3 so you kind of get a feel for what they're going to do for Cyberpunk 2077 and how they're going to intermesh quest stuff the way they do in The Witcher 3. Would recommend The Witcher 3, but if you're not into fantasy, just wait until Cyberpunk comes out. This next game is one of those ones that has better deals elsewhere, but if you're insistent on buying it on Steam, then the option is available to you. But I would highly recommend Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's one of the best Star Wars games, period. You think about that for a second. There's some really good Star Wars games out there, and Jedi Fallen Order is one of the best. It is so good. Respawn killed it. I don't understand how a company that did a lot of shooter stuff could come in and make a game that wants you to play a Dark Souls type game set in the Star Wars universe, right? They are known for shooter stuff. They are most notably known for shooter stuff, I should say. But for the most part, Respawn has come in and made a new Star Wars game that is one of the best ones. It kind of came out of left field. If you don't like Dark Souls, if you don't like those kind of games like Sekiro or Bloodborne, don't worry, because I hate those games and I love Fallen Order. It does a really good job of approaching that harder, more difficult combat, slower, intentional lightsaber combat, melee combat, in a way that is excellent. It is going to take the Star Wars themes and give you a really cool experience for people who want to feel like they are a badass, because they did such a good job on making the combat feel weighty, but also feeling like you have complete control over what's going on. And that is a really difficult balance when it comes to lightsaber games. There's only been a couple that have done it well, and Fallen Order is one of them. So I think that this is definitely a recommended game for me. It is one of my favorite games this year. And honestly, if you haven't played it, I do recommend it. But you know, the hard thing is it is cheaper on other platforms. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you want to pick it up on Steam, look elsewhere first. Next up, I would recommend Doom because it is phenomenal. Yeah, it came out in 2016, but Doom Eternal is coming out this next year, early next year. And Doom Eternal looks like better Doom. And Doom was really, 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 really good. If you like fast-paced shooters where you feel like there's kind of a bit of a power fantasy going on, then yeah, Doom is freaking phenomenal, especially for $5. Like, are you kidding me? Pick up Doom. There's also a much improved game that I'm going to recommend, which is Civilization 6. Seems to be the case that if you have a Civilization game that comes out, you tend to play the previous Civilization game until a couple expansions later, and then you play the new one. This is no exception. With Gathering Storm, Civilization 6 is, in my opinion, a better game than Civilization 5. You can pick up the entire Platinum Edition, which is a bit expensive, but comes with all of the expansions, the base game, and the DLCs. It is, like I said, a little pricey, but it's still less than the cost of a full price new game. So that is something to consider. I think if you have Civilization 6, pick up the expansions. Because it makes it into that better Civilization game. If you like strategy games, especially 4X strategy games, Civilization 6 is phenomenal, and I do highly recommend jumping in and trying it. But the game definitely becomes better once you get Rise and Fall and Gathering Storm. Those two expansions make it into a better game than Civilization 5, in my opinion. And there's a bunch of other, workshop stuff that you can check out for Civilization 6. Additionally, I think that too many people don't they go down on the graphics. They feel like the graphics of Civilization 6 are a devolvement of Civilization 5, but I heartily disagree. I think the charm of the graphics work really well once you're playing it, and if that's what's kind of keeping you off from it because it's a little cartoony compared to the previous versions of these games, then I would suggest trying it, because it's not necessarily the graphics that make the game, it's the content, and the way that they've built 6 works really well with the expansions. That's just my recommendation though. And finally, let's just round this all off with a solid recommendation for anybody who loves video games, especially old video games, because Resident Evil 2 is on a massive discount. This just came out but didn't, right? Like, it's one of those weird things where it's a remake of Resident Evil 2, which is one of the best Resident Evil games, and it makes it an even better game, like 100%. It is really, really, really good. If you have Resident Evil 2 and you haven't picked up a Resident Evil game in a while, then Resident Evil 7 is also on sale, which I find to be additionally a phenomenal game. So you have Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil 3 remake is coming out this next year, early next year. So that is another thing that I'm like, well, if you're going to play these games, definitely play Resident Evil 2, definitely play 7, and when Resident Evil 3 comes out, it's going to be another big hit because they've been absolutely crushing it with these past couple games, and Resident Evil 2 is no exception to that. It is phenomenal. But if you're not into scary games, I could see how it might be a bit of a deterrent, but I would say, look, listen, sometimes you just gotta face your fears, because there are some really good scary games out there that are phenomenal experiences. Resident Evil 2 is one of them. But those are my recommendations for the Steam Winter Sale 2019. Now, here's the thing. You may have other recommendations. I have missed a bunch of games, but my point here was to give you just a list of solid games that I would recommend that are going to give you good value for your money, good value for your time, and just good value over how good the games actually are. If you have any other recommendations, please put them in the comments below. Like, you're not recommending them to me. I own a stupid amount of games. You're probably going to recommend something that I already have. It's going to be difficult for you to not do. With that said, if you recommend something in the comments, other people are going to see it, and you're helping other people buy things, right? This is a community thing. This isn't just a personal thing where you get upset that I didn't recommend your favorite game of all time. Don't worry about it. You recommend it to somebody else, they're going to pick it up and enjoy it. So you're going to help other people in the sale pick up games that you enjoy, and that is just a good thing across the board. So if you have a recommendation, put it in the comments below. I love to see that kind of stuff because sometimes I find things that people recommend to me that I haven't ever tried. You know, Life is Strange is one of those. It's now my favorite game of all time. I had that recommended to me a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed the fact that people did that. So I'm always on the lookout for stuff, but just try to recommend it to other people as well, because I think that for the most part, you're going to help more people just with a simple little comment of like, hey, you should check out this game as well, than you will if you get all angry saying that I didn't recommend your favorite game. Also, if you're going to be buying on Steam, make sure you head over to some of the other platforms first to make sure you're getting the best deal, because some of those platforms do give you Steam keys and that you just be getting a better deal and you'll be saving yourself money. But if you're the kind of person that just doesn't want to use the Epic Game Store, really take a moment to consider how much you really don't want to use it, because if it's a lot, then that's fine. But if it's kind of a mediocre amount, then it might be worth saving $10 on some really, really big titles like Borderlands 3, for example, or, I don't know, Jedi Fallen Order. You could save $10 on that versus Steam just based on the fact that they give you this $10 coupon, which you can use to take $10 off. So kind of consider the fact that you can get a better deal elsewhere in a lot of cases here, and some of those cases will give you a Steam key. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any recommendations, again, put them in the comments below, and we shall see you guys next time.